Sonic Boom Episode 17, Eggman the Author. An author is spelled in French for no reason. I like that the island has a snowy mountain peak on it. We see Sonic getting some burgers, and he says their food is mediocre, just to say he loves it. So, what? Why isn't... Well, at least it's a change up from his favorite food being chili dogs, but it still shows how out of touch the show is with Sonic. But I guess since he was a judge of a chili dog competition, chili dogs still are his favorite food, and he just varies it up. Tails spins Sonic around with the Enter Beam to make him smash into the robot in Spin Dash form. Eggman then shouts cut because the robot was destroyed too early. And he says that he's gonna have to rewrite the script. He's planning to make a movie, and it was amusing when he says that Sonic is an irritating person who constantly annoys him, and so it's the role Sonic's going to play. But the gag went on too long after that. It was amusing when he said that he could encourage him once in a while. Why would he feel entitled to that from his mortal enemy? Amy then nagged Sonic that he found somebody else to play him in the movie, Dave. So he's planning on using CGI to make him actually look like Sonic later, right? It's so cringy seeing Dave say the word duh for too long. Sonic tells him to stop using the megaphone, and it says that he turned down the part because he knew he'd get it wrong. Amy then says she'll look out for Eggman's best interests on the movie. I'd forgive this traitor if she was deliberately sabotaging him, but she seems to be Eggman's best friend in the show. She's always being his assistant when she gets the excuse. Maybe she's a control freak like Lois and Malcolm in the Middle. And as we can see, she's telling Eggman to hire a stuntman to fight the giant robot, so maybe she just wants an excuse to control someone. Why not have Sally then? She'd suit this better because she's an actual princess, with actual charisma as a leader. Knuckles gets crushed by a robot and somehow doesn't die. And then he's blasted by the robot because he's the obvious stuntman. Why make the stuntman so obviously not him, and then make him blue? It's like he's trying to make him look like Sonic for real, when the only way this would be acceptable is if he CGI'd him to look like Sonic later. After Knuckles gets blasted with T, Sonic says that Eggman presents himself as both an underdog and an all-powerful tyrant in his script. And he asks who's gonna believe that some evil scientist with unlimited resources can't defeat a hedgehog. That's a plot hole in every continuity of Sonic. So that's tone-deaf hypocritical of the writers to make fun of just to not provide an explanation. Tails says that Eggman could cover the origin of his mustache at a flashback instead of the beginning. And he spends too much time on a musical number. And he makes changes to the script, showing he's a genius in a unique way for a change because it shows he can make a film better. He's like a great critic. But why would he help Eggman? Of course, Eggman thinks the script is dreadful because the film is his vision. So he tells Sonic and Amy off and they walk away. And Eggman says he hates that hedgehog, in completely different acting than AOSCH did it, but at least it's realistic sounding. Orbot tells Sonic that Eggman plans to drill for Robot Army ore as he's using the film as a cover. So he and Cubot are warning Sonic about this because they don't want to be replaced. So we cut to Sonic attacking the bipedal drilling robot. With epic music that doesn't hide how slow Sonic's running with the camera in front of him, he lures the missile to the robot much slower than he really should have. Then Eggman says he did it terrifically and it was a double ruse. Orbot tricked him into appearing in the last scene of his film. I should have known better than to have faith in the show to actually have a tense, exciting part of the episode, and have Eggman be smart enough to use the mundane plan as just a cover. But at least it was a plot twist. And it makes more logical sense that Eggman's robots wouldn't betray him. Eggman walks down a red carpet in front of an inexplicably cheering audience and a smiling mayor. That wouldn't happen. They shouldn't look genuinely happy. No one would genuinely support someone who causes that much collateral damage and terror to their own town. And he gets a bunch of pictures taken of him. And one of the audience members claps and smiles. That's dumb. It's amusing to see Eggman not only acting badly, but also wearing a silly white wig. He says that his lifelong dream is to build a theme park. The audience constantly laughs, and Eggman reveals that the audience is supposed to be hypnotized, but he forgot to install the mind control device into the camera. If he can invent that, why the fuck hasn't he taken over the world already? He's appeared on TV before, why doesn't he do it again? And do that. If he can make that kind of plan happen, why doesn't he just make this plan happen again, but do it right the next time? Brainwashing power is a very overpowered power for him to suddenly have out of the blue, and it's the definition of a story breaker, because realistically he'd have brainwashed everybody by now. He wouldn't forget to do that. In fact, wouldn't it be Orbot and Cubot's job? So Eggman wouldn't be able to forget? It'd make more sense if Cubot forgot, but even then he should be programmed better. I get that he was just too caught up in making and showing off his film, but his film was all part of a ruse. Which at least makes way more sense than him wasting his time on a vanity project that doesn't benefit him at all. This episode was an interesting one with a lot of clever twists. It makes sense that Eggman would put his creative side and ego to use by making a film about himself fighting Sonic. And that he'd vent by trying to humiliate Sonic the whole time. And that people would want to go see it to see how bad it would be. It also makes a lot of sense that Orbot and Cubot were lying to Sonic instead of actually betraying their master. So they tricked him into luring a missile to a robot on camera. Great way to have it defeated. Like how Tails spun him around with the ender beam and sent him spin dashing into the robot. I hate that he has to touch his belt to get the ender beam working though. I always assumed that he just summoned it with magic. That it was his own unique magical ability to sonic boom. It would make sense since there's a lightning kitsune, so the ender beam would fit with him having cool electricity powers. But I guess this explains why he only ever uses electricity powers to have a confusing solid beam, and doesn't use it for anything else. It would be cool if he had electricity powers. Just look at how unbelievably cool it is to see him holding lightning. But no, that would be way too fascinating and awesome for this show. To see him throwing lightning everywhere. Sure, the robots defeat in one hit every time, which is Sonic X's problem, so I thought they'd progress since then. But at least it's in a creative way, which is better than Sonic X, where you usually just spin dashes. It feels more gratifying to have the robots die in one hit if it's the result of a creative and different way of attacking it, because the writer already scored brownie points by trying something different. And it was great that there really was an evil plan at the end where Eggman planned on hypnotizing people with the film. But the problem is that if he can even do this at all, logically he'd have already won, or tried again and won. And he certainly wouldn't have forgotten to install the mind control cameras. What a lazy Deus Ex Machina. But even then, that kind of makes sense, because he was all caught up in his film and distracted. For once, this was a really good episode. I loved seeing Tails be a critic improving Eggman's script, even if the very idea that Eggman's sworn enemies would help him at anything with no consequences from society is ridiculous. None of them would do that. But the writers are so desperate to shake things up by having the heroes work for Eggman for a change that they skew logic. Even though the heroes are always actively annoyed by him, so it's not like they have a reason to like him. They don't like him. Sonic's always annoyed by him, so it's not like he appreciates him for giving him an exciting life. Because Boom Sonic's always acting grumpy and ungrateful. Not the thrill-seeking, cheerful adventurer he's supposed to be. But I guess it makes sense because Amy's such a control freak that if she can be someone's manager, she'll jump at the chance. And her friends stick around to be her bodyguard just in case. But even then, Eggman would have told her no. Also, I expected Eggman to be writing a novel. But apparently, the writer of this episode mistook the French word for author to mean film director. Either that or he was getting it wrong on purpose. Or maybe it means film director too. But somehow I doubt it. Episode 17-2, Just a Guy. This was a very hit-and-miss season so far. Tails sees an incoming Eggman attack by looking at a green screen, and for once they're trying to be epic, but it's still a bit lame as the heroes all contact each other. But then Knuckles says that he'd rather watch a movie. Then some random civilian asks Sonic politely if he can come along on a fight with Eggman. Sonic says he can't bring him to a battle, and somehow everyone's offended when he says that he's just a guy. Shouldn't everyone immediately understand that it's too dangerous? Somehow even Knuckles is calling him out on it, as they're fighting Badniks. Even Amy bitches at him, and even Eggman says he's being crummy. For fuck's sake, how would these characters ever be able to handle Fleetway Sonic? The civilians are all mad, and one of them says that Sonic's lost touch with a common man. And one of them says he thinks he's better than everyone else. But he does. That's his appeal. That's who he is. Why are they surprised by this? This episode really sucks. Why is everyone mad at Sonic? He's not even being that bad. I didn't even notice he was being insensitive. He was trying to protect an innocent person. Amy even brings Sonic to an insensitivity seminar. And for some reason, everyone will go to it, not just Amy. Also, somehow Amy's excited about them having sensitivity hats made of paper. And comedy chimps here. I thought they'd go to someone qualified, not Amy. Amy's the last person qualified to do a sensitivity seminar. She's insensitive. She's always a bitch in like Sonic X, especially season 3. In Sonic and the Black Knight, when she runs after Sonic with a hammer. And now she's telling other people how to not be insensitive. She tells them all to go to their happy places. The writer apparently thinks that she's qualified to do this just because she's a girl. We don't see any other character doing this. Either that or Amy's a huge creator's pet because she's the only one taken seriously enough that she's considered a character who can have any kind of talent and be put into any situation. Either that or the writer's just doing this with her out of obligation because they think they'll be accused of being sexist otherwise. Because considering how unlikable Amy tends to act, where she clearly is acting bossy, maybe the writer knows that she's bad. Sonic says awkwardly that he could be more mindful of others' feelings. This is not Sonic. He's supposed to have an attitude. So he awkwardly apologizes to Mike. I don't see how this is a comedy. This is not comedic, this is irritating. So how do they think this is funny? He invites him to the next battle, and he's really impatient to go, even though there is no battle right now. Why can't they just immediately go to Eggman's base and pick a fight with him right now? Naturally, Sonic's really irritated at him, and fortunately he gets a battle at the best possible time. I hope Mike is hurt for all this. Good, Cubot lands on him. And the show had the guts to injure him. The civilian calls him out on that, and he hypocritically says he's just a guy. Then Sonic snarks that he only took him to the battle because those people told him to. Somehow they all gasp offended because he said you people. And Sonic gets put into the sensitivity training. Sonic naturally tells people off that being compassionate is saving people from Eggman every week, and he quits because he's sick of feeling unappreciated. I loved that speech. The situation around it is fucked up stupid, but this is the kind of speech that, if it was a comic where I could easily write dialogue down, I would have written down what he said so I could quote it. Instead it all went by too fast. Basically, because the Lightning Bolt Society was spying on Sonic, they found out he quit immediately and start pulling all sorts of pranks. It sure is convenient for the Lightning Bolt Society that they always happen to be spying in exactly the right time and place every time the plot demands it. The civilians beg him to help, and Sonic says that they're not dangerous, which is true. I love that he put on sunglasses like Scourge had. This is the perfect justification for him actually quitting for real, if he ever did it. Of course he'd get fed up with these ungrateful idiots. In fact, I don't know why he doesn't just move. They turn on him at the drop of a hat. Sonic saves a baby that got sent into the sky, and a bunch of other civilians from rampaging sheep. And just then, Eggman sneaks up on him in his Eggmobile. Its giant claw makes noise, so Sonic shouldn't have needed Mike to warn him. It's like Mike was the creator's pet because the writer wanted to force him to be useful, prove Sonic wrong. It would have been better if Mike had gotten to at least try to fight some badniks instead of instantly getting hurt just because Cubot randomly fell on him. Because when does that ever happen? That felt like an ass pull. Anyways, Sonic easily saves the day. So quick that I missed it. I don't see how they needed Sonic in particular to do that though. And the civilians thank him. Not that I care, I hate them all now. And infuriatingly, Sonic calls Mike a hero for warning him about Eggman, even though he should have heard of himself. The show sucks. I just felt like saying that when the show's got one horrible episode after another, with barely any break. I can't think of a plot so far that hasn't had its premise be forced. Consistently bad writing like this gets me bitter about continuity as a whole, and I haven't felt like that since late Archie. I just want one good episode. One of the Lightning Bolters asks his friends if they could do better, and for some reason they all agreed to go to sensitivity training. A criminal gang would never agree to that. This is stupid. What idiotic writer thought this episode would be fun? This was an episode about everyone turning on Sonic for no good reason. That doesn't scream horrible episode to them? That's the easiest definition of a bad episode. You'd have to be literally sadistic to enjoy watching Sonic be treated like this. This is like issue 40 territory. Only worse because it's all the civilians turning on him, and even Amy, for something ridiculously minor and insignificant. I don't blame him for saying he wanted to quit, even if of course he didn't mean it. Really, he wanted a break from these idiots. A lot of fans turned on the Mobians in New Mobitropolis because they hated Nicole and trusted Ixis, but at least that was kind of justified in the plot. Nicole did bad things, and Ixis impressed people. While with this, Sonic didn't do anything wrong. He was being responsible. People should have commended him for trying to keep Mike out of trouble. Fleetway Sonic says stuff way worse than him on a daily basis, and yet everyone turns on him and puts him in sensitivity training. Completely missing the appeal of his character. If people don't like him for his attitude, how did they like him at all? How has this not happened way earlier? He'd have to be ridiculously restrained and fakely polite in public to avoid constantly offending these people, not being himself at all, if they can't handle even the slightest of relatable snarkiness. At that point, he should leave this town of idiots. I don't care if Eggman would take over the town. It would be nice to see how Boom Eggman would run a town for once, and to make him in a more powerful position, making the heroes more underdogs. They shouldn't have blamed him for saying what's obviously the truth, that Mike can't fight. And they're being complete hypocrites by not accepting responsibility when he decided to humor them and got him hurt. The writer completely wasted the potential of having a random guy fight Eggman because he immediately got hurt instead of at least getting something accomplished, and showing us that even normal people could be a hero. I mean, Antoine's just a guy. He's no more capable than anyone else. Inside him, he doesn't even have a sword. And even he's done a lot of useful things. So for the show to immediately prove Sonic 100% right is a bad message that flies in the face of normal, non-powered characters like Antoine and Sally being successful. The whole premise of the story was based on all of the townspeople we saw being unlikable. And how is Amy qualified to teach sensitivity training? It's not just an informal thing for her friends, because Comedy Chip is there too. In fact, Amy's usually a bitch in this show, including in this very episode. So she's pretty hypocritical to be in this position. I expected her to be more likable in the show than she was. But instead, it doesn't feel like it's like she's the best thing ever just because she's not obsessing over Sonic, because either way, she's still just as unlikable as she usually is. She's still better than Sonic X, though. At least she's interesting and not... Well, she is bad-tempered, because that's why she's a bitch. She may be used for a ton of different unrelated things, which kind of makes her feel like she has a different personality every week. But doesn't that make her more of a deep character? The rest of her friends are one-dimensional, but they could put Amy in any situation that requires a girl, or at least they think requires a girl. Cause suspiciously it's never someone like Knuckles who's teaching the sensitivity training, or redecorating Eggman's base, or being his film manager. It's always Amy, even though she's way less likable than Sally is. Seriously, what's likable about this girl? I'll wait. But yeah, I really hated those Viltures' behavior. What's the point of the show having no continuity if the writers wouldn't end this episode by having the entire village being destroyed? If you're not gonna have continuity, go all out. Make it obvious and have episodes end with stuff like that. It doesn't matter anyways. It would have been satisfying to see Eggman send an asteroid crashing onto those same people who bothered Sonic all episode. But even though there's no continuity, the writers won't even do that. Why not? Why not do something dark like kill off these awful characters in a slapstick cartoonish way when there's not going to be any consequences to excuse not doing it? That's why they don't think the slapstick against Knuckles is too dark to do, because it has no consequences. So that's probably why I never laugh at it. Like, when Knuckles got hit in the face by a pie. I guess it could have been funny if it completely ruined his plan. Like, he was planning on having his picture taken, and now he can't because he has to spend some time getting the pie off his face. And so he has to get the picture taken a different day. And by the way, That joke where the woman who keeps losing her baby says, "again" a lot? That was awful the first time, and somehow the joke didn't die. No one would be so flippant about constantly losing their baby, unless she's a terrible mother. Child services would have gone after her by now. She'd be just as panicked every time it happened. And it wasn't funny the first time. So constantly repeating that joke is just obnoxious and intrusive from how repetitive and distracting it is. This is why trying to be a comedy doesn't work for Sonic. Only 1% of the time is it successful in Sonic the Comic. That's basically it. You know the comedy's really bad when it makes you angry. That's the exact opposite of the intended reaction. At least the next episode looks like it'll be great.